a start. So you'll see we have Amitabha back on the shrine, surrounded by gold and by red. And we're going to be doing a puja dedicated to Amitabha tonight. In fact, we're going to be doing that one of Ratnashuri's that we did with Dharma Karunya earlier in the week. I loved it so much, I thought, yeah, let's do it again. There's an invitation for tonight. So it's dedicated to Amitabha and it is dedicated to devotion. Okay. Now, Shinran says a beautiful thing. He says, "We who are like bits of broken tiles and rubble will be transmuted into gold." Okay. So the invitation for tonight's puja is that you bring along something that is broken. Okay. So on the shrine, you're so not going to be able to see them, all right, but I'll hold them up. Like on the shrine, we've got all sorts of bits of like broken tiles and broken pottery. And this is actually all from the excavations for the Earth Sky Garden. There's all this sort of like, I don't know, crockery from previous people that lived at Cornhill Farm. As an offering during the puja, it's like we can offer ourselves as this broken object and allow it to be transmuted into gold. Okay, so let's salute the three jewels in the person of Amida in unison. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dhammaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Namah. Om Ha Hum. So we'll hear today's sections of the Tanisho, chant to Amitabha and then sit for a few minutes. Tanisho 4. There is a difference in compassion between the path of sages and the path of Pure Land. The compassion in the path of sages is expressed through pity, sympathy, and care for all beings. But rare it is that one can help another as completely as one desires. The compassion in the path of Pure Land is to quickly attain Buddhahood, saying the Nembutsu, and with the true heart of compassion and love, save all beings completely as we desire. In this life, no matter how much pity and sympathy we may feel for others, it is impossible to help another as we truly wish. Thus, our compassion is inconsistent and limited. Only the saying of Nembutsu manifests the complete and never-ending compassion, which is true, real, and sincere. Tanisho 5. I, Shinran, have never even once uttered the Nembutsu for the sake of my father and mother. The reason is that all beings have been fathers and mothers, brothers and sisters in the timeless process of birth and death. When I attain Buddhahood in the next birth, each and every one will be saved. If it were a good accomplished by my own powers, then I could transfer the accumulated merits of Nembutsu to save my father and mother. But since such is not the case, when we become free from self-power and quickly attain the enlightenment of the Pure Land, we will save those bound closest to us through transcendental powers, no matter how deeply they are immersed in the karmic sufferings of the 6 realms and 4 modes of birth. From 16. In the person of single-hearted Nembutsu, the turning of mind occurs only once. The turning of mind refers to this: transformation of those ignorant of the primal vow of other power, who, being granted Amida's wisdom, and realizing the impossibility of the everyday mind attaining birth, abandon the old mind and entrust the self to the primal vow. Om Amideva Hri. 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 Om So today we're going to be exploring compassion and bodhicitta in the Tanisho. And I think a lot of this material actually just brings up for me this sort of like, am I going to be able to explain this? And in a way, I think that's like betraying a lack of trust in all your resonance with the material, if you see what I mean. It's like, I can probably trust that you are having a resonance with the material, but then I just go, but I don't know that I've got the words, and I don't know that I can explain it, because I just feel it in my heart, like, yes, it's like that. But then that doesn't work for a talk, does it? It's like you're trying to explain it. So I probably just need to trust that, you know, each of you can tune into your own sense of this area. I don't know why I don't trust it, because certainly everybody in my group is. So why should I think the rest of you aren't? Anyway, good. Right, so let's start off with going through these first two sections from the Tanisho, from Tanisho 4 and 5. Okay, there is a difference in compassion between the path of sages and the path of Pure Land. So the path of sages, that's mainstream Mahayana Buddhism, okay? With the Bodhisattva ideal, that the idea is that we are all aspiring bodhisattvas, and we're going to practice the 6 perfections. We're going to practice ethics and patience and giving and wisdom and all the rest of it. We're going to practice the 6 perfections, and eventually the bodhicitta will arise, and then we're going to follow the path of Dharmakara, and we're going to become bodhisattvas, and we're going to make vows and save all beings. So that's the path. When he's talking about the path of sages, he's talking about, yeah, the sort of standard Mahayana stream of Buddhism. And then he's saying, well, the path of Pure Land, guess what, is different. The compassion in the path of sages is expressed through pity, sympathy, and care for all beings. But rare it is that one can help another as completely as one desires. So we're practicing metta, we're practicing compassion, we're practicing acting those qualities out in the world. We are developing those qualities. And what I love about Shinran, amongst the many things I love about Shinran, is like he just brings this sort of devastating honesty where he says, yes, we've got these big ideals that we want to express pity, sympathy, and care for all beings. And the fact of the matter is, it is rare to be able to help someone as completely as we desire. You know, even just on the level of like, maybe I have a friend having a bit of a hard time, maybe, I don't know, getting a bit depressed in lockdown or something like that. And actually what I want is just to be able to kind of like rescue her and like make it okay for her. And like, I don't want that to be happening for her. And I can't do that. I can't do that. Next bit. The compassion in the path of Pure Land is to quickly attain Buddhahood, saying the Nembutsu, and with the true heart of compassion and love, save all beings as completely as we desire. In this life, no matter how much pity and sympathy we may feel for others, it is impossible to help another as we truly wish. Thus, our compassion is inconsistent and limited. Only the saying of Nembutsu manifests the complete and never-ending compassion, which is true, real, and sincere. Okay, so I'm going to unpack this more as we go on. So basically he's saying the compassion in the path of Pure Land is we go to the Pure Land, we become enlightened, and then we are in a much better position to actually be able to help beings. We'll unpack that a bit more in a bit. But I just want to draw out this bit about, thus our compassion is inconsistent and limited. I think it's just another bit of this honesty where, you know, I've been practicing the metta bhavana and I love metta, okay? It's like, you know, you might get mindfulness types or metta types, like I'm a metta type, okay? It's like I love metta. I've been practicing the metta bhavana since 2006, and I just get more and more aware that my compassion is inconsistent and limited. There's some people I care about loads, and there's other people where there's like, there might be a little flicker, or actually like on that day, I don't give a damn. Like actually, I just don't. And Shinran is pointing out like there's an ideal, and then there's in practice, well, what is that really like? And I just love this kind of, it's like this. Have you noticed? It's like this. And he's not saying that's a problem. He's just pointing out, and that is the fact of the matter. As a limited being, as a finite being, our compassion is inconsistent and limited. Okay, 5. I, Shinran, have never even once uttered the Nembutsu for the sake of my father and mother. Okay, so we are probably not going to get the full shock value of this statement. But in medieval Japan at that time, it was a society based around ancestor worship. Worship of the kami, the sort of nature spirits, the spirits of place, and worship of your ancestors. And you had real sort of reverence and respect for your father and mother, and then your ancestors going back. And that, that was like how the whole society was structured. So Shinran saying, I have never even once uttered the Nembutsu for the sake of my father and mother. There would be like people gasping and I don't know, dropping things and looking horrified, and the fabric of society will break down if you're not doing this. And I don't quite know what the equivalent in our society would be, actually. Anyway, let's not go down a random track. You can see if anything occurs to you. So he says, the reason is that all beings have been fathers and mothers, brothers and sisters in the timeless process of birth and death. When I attain Buddhahood in the next birth, each and every one will be saved. So what he's saying there is actually like he is approaching this from a Mahayana perspective. So it can look like the Pure Land school, you could see it as being very selfish, like I'm going to say the Nembutsu and I'm going to be saved by Amida and I'm going to go to the Pure Land, and won't that be wonderful for me? But actually that isn't the flavour of it. So for a start, you have, so going back to Shinran's 3 minds of faith, the third mind of faith, Yokusho, that is desire or aspiration for birth in the Pure Land. And that's not just for us. It's like that desire that everyone be born in the Pure Land. The Pure Land, it's a collective symbol for enlightenment. There's not just us there. It's like we want everyone to go to the Pure Land and become enlightened. So Vasubandhu, remember the second patriarch of the Pure Land school in Shinran's eyes, in some of his writings, he talks about the 5 gates or 5 practices for birth in the Pure Land, which I won't go through because you don't need to know and it's too much information. But I just love the analogy he uses. So to start off with, it's like sort of worship and praise, and he calls this approaching the house. And then you've got another practice, and it's entering the house. And you've got another practice, and it's entering the innermost secret chamber of the house. And then you've got the 5th stage, which is transferring merits. And that is leaving the house to play in the garden of birth and death and the forest of the passions. So it's like we go to the Pure Land, enlightenment arises, we gain the enlightenment of the Pure Land, as Shinran puts it, and then we leave immediately to play in the garden of birth and death and the forest of the passions. And I just love the playing metaphor as well. And also that you kind of like leave the house, which is very sort of like square and static, and you just go and kind of play in the chaos of the world. Yeah, I love that image, really love that image. So this is what Shinran's talking about. So then he goes on, if it were a good accomplished by my own powers, then I could transfer the accumulated merits of Nembutsu to save my father and mother. But since such is not the case, okay, so this is going back to this idea that actually when we chant the Nembutsu, when we sit to meditate, when we have any of these turnings towards practicing the Dharma, this is Shinjin, this is faith arising, and the faith is endowed us by Amida. Every time we chant a mantra, every time we do any form of practice, this is the mind of Amida alive and erupting in us. So how can he transfer the merits of chanting Nembutsu to his father and mother? They are not his merits. They belong to Amida. But then he says, when we become free of self-power and quickly attain the enlightenment of the Pure Land, quickly, the quick path, we will save those bound closest to us through transcendental powers, no matter how deeply they are immersed in the karmic sufferings of the 6 realms and 4 modes of birth. So what I love about that is, well, for a start, he's really saying, I have, he's really expressing a bodhisattva aspiration. But he sees at a deep level that the way to really tackle the roots of suffering is to become enlightened. And then we really are in a position to help beings. I could go multiple ways here, right? Which way am I going to go? Let's stick to the text and just say the nice thing about this. So I just love this thing about like saving those bound closest to us by transcendental powers. Okay, now let's go this way first. This way first. So what this does is it's like Shinran's taken the Bodhisattva myth, so he's completely part of the myth of the Bodhisattva. It's central to Pure Land. You've got the story of Dharmakara, who is like the classic Bodhisattva who practices the perfections for eons and generates merit and all the rest of it. So it's like he's really behind this kind of like standard, also classic Mahayana view of the career of the Bodhisattva. But then he sort of takes it and stands it on its head, where it's like, actually, we don't have to do it. We are the recipients of Dharmakara's many, many merits. So it's like we are becoming receptive to, permeable to Amida. And Dharmakara, he's had the Bodhisattva career and he's helping us. So normally we think it's us. We have to have the Bodhisattva career and we have to practice the 6 perfections and then we have to save all beings. Whereas Shinran, he's turned it round and he said, well, we're one of the all beings. We're being saved by Bodhisattvas. So I really like this sort of turnaround where we're looking at bodhicitta and we're looking at it as a force or a power. Okay, you just have to put as if by all these. Like every time, you sort of throw words at a way of talking about the transcendental. You have to kind of go, well, it's as if, or it's a bit like. It's not really quite like that, but think of it like. And the reason I love it is because it makes the Bodhisattva project feel more like a sort of mutual web of conditionality, where in a way it's like everyone's sort of trying to help everyone. It's like there's a network of enlightening beings. It's like a map of the Bodhisattva ideal, which is a kind of world as Sangha or universe as Sangha. So we could look at it in this very sort of heroic and inspiring but slightly daunting way, where it's like we're going to practice the perfections and we're going to generate this aspiration, this unbearable longing to wish to save all beings. And that can be really inspiring. And certainly for myself, I do find it really inspiring, and something in me goes, yes. And another part of me goes, I can't do it. Whereas what Shinran's talking about, it's this sort of more collective model. So this bit where he's saying about we will save those bound closest to us by transcendental powers, no matter how deeply they may be immersed in the karmic sufferings of the 6 realms and 4 modes of birth. So we all have this sense of connection with the Dharma. There's something in each of us that has drawn us towards the Dharma. So it could be our seeing into samsara in this life. It could be a connection with the Dharma from our own practice in previous lives. Or it could be that there are beings in the Pure Land who have been close to us in previous lives, who are saving us through their transcendental powers, no matter how deeply we are immersed in the karmic sufferings of the 6 realms. So I just kind of like how it has this, we can take it from either end. We can kind of take whichever perspective is most helpful to us. So what Shinran's talking about here is bodhicitta. He doesn't use that term. He calls it the mind of Amida endowed to me, the Nembutsu erupting. He doesn't use the term bodhicitta, but essentially this is what he is talking about. So bodhicitta, what is bodhicitta? So Bhante calls it the will to awakening, but not like our will. And it's got this altruistic flavour, but it is beyond that, because it is not within the confines of self and other. So Bhante says in the survey, not for our own sake, not even for the sake of others, should we seek to attain the divine, but simply and solely for its own irresistible sake. It's like becoming enlightened for the sake of others. It only makes sense while you are within the viewpoint of self and other. So it might be very inspiring for you to think about it like that, which is marvellous. Or you might feel more inspired by like, actually freedom, just becoming a light for myself, becoming an island to myself. You know, the image of freedom might inspire you more, but actually we become an island for ourselves so we can become a light for others. Actually, they're not separate. They are so not separate. So here's Bhante from the Bodhisattva ideal on the topic of the bodhicitta. Prepare to boggle your brain. The bodhicitta is not a mental state, activity, or function at all. It is certainly not a thought that you or I could entertain. It has nothing to do with thought. It is not even an act or will in the sense, act of will in the sense in which we understand the term. The bodhicitta represents the manifestation, even the eruption within us of something transcendental, the emergence within our ordinary experience of something of a totally different nature. Not a thought, not a propensity, not an idea, not a concept. But if we must use words at all, a profound transcendental experience which reorients our entire being. It is not, however, a personal experience. Another fundamental characteristic of the bodhicitta is that it is not individual. There is only one bodhicitta in which all individuals participate, or which individuals manifest to varying degrees. So that's what Bhante says. And Shinran says, only the saying of Nembutsu manifests the complete and never-ending compassion, which is true, real, and sincere. They're talking about the same thing. So, I've got a choice which direction to go. Which way should we go? So I suppose it's interesting to think, well, how does it feel different if we think about bodhicitta as something we have to generate, or like the bodhisattva ideal as a path we need to follow or we want to follow? Or thinking about bodhicitta as other power that we entrust to, a force that we are in service to, or we are in relation to, or we surrender to. Now, in the Indo-Tibetan tradition, I don't think that there was such a sense of conflict between self-power and other power. So if you look at a text like the Bodhicharyavatara, Shantideva, he's so determined, and he's just saying, yes, I'm gonna, he has whole chapters of like, I'm gonna save all beings, and may this happen, and may that happen, and I'm gonna be totally determined, and this is what I'm gonna do, and I'm just, he's completely there with self-power. I've got to do this. Hey, mind, get on with it. So he's totally there with self-power, and you can see his whole heart and guts are behind that project. And at the same time, he's addressing these passionate verses of plea and begging and devotion and surrender, particularly to his Yidam Manjughosha, but also to, other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And for him, there is no conflict. There is no conflict between us really trying to do all the actions we can do and surrendering and saying, this is beyond me. I can see my limitations. As a small, limited self, I cannot do this. So I'll just read you a verse from the Bodhicharyavatara where, I'll just read you the verse because it's nice. destroying previous evil actions, receiving oceans of merit by the power of the awakening mind, bodhicitta alone. They progress more quickly even than the Shravakas. That's the followers of the Hinayana, early Buddhism. So, he's talking about like progressing by the power of the awakening mind, opening us to the awakening mind. And then in the Ratnaguna Samchayagata, this other very early perfection of wisdom text, what again then is the vessel that leads to the Bodhi, the enlightenment? Mounted upon it, one guides to nirvana all beings. Great is that vessel, immense, vast like the vastness of space. Those who travel upon it are carried to safety, delight, and ease. So again, it's this situation where it's like, we just need to keep kind of asking ourselves, okay, so what is the most helpful approach for me to take up in this situation? Is it more helpful for me to take up a self-development approach? So with the example of my friend who's getting a bit depressed in lockdown, well, actually, there are things I can do. I can keep on sending her little WhatsApp messages, and I can make sure that I make time to give her a call regularly. I can give other people a bit of a nudge and say, oh, do you know what? I think she's struggling a bit. Do you want to send a postcard? There's things that I can do. But then when is it more helpful to step back and just go, I can see my own limitation. This is samsara. I cannot fix this. And let go. And actually, there's something about this seeing our helplessness. In a way, so from Shinran's point of view, if we think we can fix it, we won't let go. So this might be a question for groups, actually. Do we believe that we can we take the perspective of Shantideva and be wholehearted behind self-power and let go in self-surrender? Or is it, are we more on sort of Shinran's side, which is actually, if I believe my limited self can fix it, I don't let go. I don't think, okay, I am helpless, I cannot fix it for this person. And there's something about that letting go of belief that if I just try really, really hard and control everything, like I'm going to be able to fix the world. I mean, that way lies burnout. And there's something about really seeing helplessness that means on an existential level, we do let go. Something bigger and eventually something non-egoic can arise in us, but only to the extent that we let go of our selfing mind that believes it can control the world. So that is Shinran's sort of basic premise. Letting go doesn't happen unless we really see our own helplessness, our own limitation. So this is where we get this term made to become so by itself, or jinen. So made to become so by itself. It's like, it's in these little quotes because it's like, well, it's like there's not an English word that says that, is there? Ratnaguna talks about it as naturalness. Things, you know, like if we leave space, when we let go, actually, can we trust that there are positive levels of conditionality beyond our willing mind that will arise if we give them space. So this is Jinen, made to become so by itself. And we looked at it a little bit yesterday with this, if we start behaving unskillfully and we come into relation with the Buddha, we just call on the Nembutsu, we call on Amida, tenderness and forbearance will appear by the virtue of made to become so by itself. So you may want to notice what fears arise, because, our primary way of keeping ourselves safe as a kind of separate, finite ego is about control, controlling our own body, controlling our immediate environment, getting other people to do what we want. We're just trying to make things safe for us, and very naturally, we're not criticizing this or trying to get rid of it. We're just kind of going, oh yeah, that is what a little conditioned being does. We try to keep ourselves safe. Of course we try to control. Why would we not? Why would we not? So just notice what the fears are around deeply realizing our own helplessness and deeply realizing our own lack of control. We were talking in our group yesterday about how Shinran asks us to let go of any outcome. Even the outcome of, if I call on the Nembutsu, I'm going to feel better, or if I call on the Nembutsu, that's like a sort of another sort of outcome, another kind of way of making things okay. So what Shinran's pointing at is, we just go, finite being, here I am, I want to control, and do you know what? I can't. And then we're in relation to something else, something much bigger. But it takes a lot of trust. It's like we really have to trust that if we allow space for Dharma Niyama processes to arise, like the outcome will actually be so much better than if we keep on trying to fix things down and we keep on trying to control everything as hard as we possibly can. And it's not like it leads to good mental states either. So there are a number of levels on which it's not usually the best plan. And this is what is meant by genuinely living the Nembutsu. So this is very ordinary. It's very everyday. Something, like Lila Matti talking this morning about waking up and realising there was no internet and then having a kind of rocky interaction with her husband. It's like life arises and our reactions arise and other people's reactions arise. And then can we just come into relation with oh yeah, I can't control everything and that's painful. And can I stay in relation to the fact that there is this vastness of infinite blue sky, and there is a conditionality, there is Dharma Niyama conditionality that just wants to arise and bring spaciousness and tell us, if we give it space, we'll know what the best action is to take. So I'll finish with this quote by Reginald Ray. He says, "Devotion is the most subtle and sophisticated attitude that a person can have towards reality. It is a recognition of the truth of egolessness. So powerful is genuine devotion that once we fully acknowledge that we have lost the thread and all hope of finding the way, the answer is already there.